If you've ever watched sports, then there may have been a time in which an athlete you enjoy watching started to elevate his performance. He started to score all the points, dribble everybody, and his performance was just outright exceptional. You see, that athlete was in a flow state. They were experiencing flow. So flow is a concept discovered by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, and he described it as the peak human experience. He described it as complete immersion into a creative activity. Essentially, flow is when you are completely immersed into the task at hand. Everything fades away. All of your thoughts, all of your emotions, the worries you have, everything fades away. You don't worry about what you're going to eat tomorrow, what you're going to eat for breakfast, that thing you did the other day. All of that fades away, and the only thing that you are focused on is the task at hand. Now you might be thinking, okay, cool. Flow states make a task feel relatively effortless. It makes it feel fun. But other than that, why is flow so powerful? You see, this Mihaly guy, he did an experiment in which he took a bunch of people from a bunch of different areas and he gave them all beepers. Now, what they did with those beepers was that throughout their normal day-to-day life, that Mihaly guy and his team would send beeps, and that beeper would ring. When that beeper rang, the people were to stop whatever task they were doing and record what they were feeling, what they were thinking about, and what they were doing when that beeper rang. Essentially, what they discovered was that people were at their happiest when they were in flow states. People were at their happiest when they were working. They found that people reported high levels of happiness when they were in flow states and when they were doing work, and people felt at their lowest when they were in their leisure time. Now, this is pretty interesting. Why is it that we humans who want and strive for leisure time are actually unhappy in the leisure time that we so desire, and we're unhappier when we're in work, when we do the thing that we don't actually want to do? And it's because in our leisure time we're not experiencing flow. When you're in work, whether you like your work or not, you're doing something that you are immersed in, that you hopefully care about. The task at hand is compelling and will give you a reward. So essentially, people in work are happier than people in leisure time. And like I said, it's because people in work are in flow states, and people watching TV are not. So what this shows us, and what Mihaly says, is that flow is the key to happiness. Flow is true happiness. It's when we are in flow states and when we are experiencing flow that we are truly happy. It's not when we're gratifying. It's not when we're doing instant gratification activities. It's not when we're watching TV or playing video games. It's when we're fully immersed into a task and we are in flow states. Okay, so great. Flow is basically happiness. Now, sure, happiness means a lot of different things for a lot of different people, but this guy said that flow is the peak human experience, and that flow is very much correlated to happiness. Okay, so great. Well, what does that mean for us, and how can we increase the amount of flow that we experience in our day-to-day lives? Well, you may not outright know exactly what tasks you do that put you in flow states, but I guarantee that there are some. For me, it's usually writing, speaking like this, and playing soccer. Hanging out with friends, hanging out with family. All of those things put me in states of flow. Now you might be like, oh, but I don't really know what my flow state is. How do I find that out? Well, I just want you to think of a time in which you were totally immersed in an activity, in which you had absolutely zero thoughts, and in which you performed pretty well. That, and the key thing is that activity may have felt like work for others, but it felt like play for you. And so just like I said, for some people, their flow activity is something that feels like work for other, but feels like fun for them. So I do enjoy writing. When I'm writing scripts for you guys, I actually really enjoy the process. I'm really totally immersed into the writing. When the words just like flow, and I'm writing fast, but not too fast, and I'm not making too many mistakes, it truly feels great. Now I'm going to give you 2 things you can do to start experiencing more flow in your life. So if you found your flow activities, that's great. If not, these things can still help you. Essentially, for someone to experience flow, their skill has to match the challenge level. If the challenge is too high and your skill is too low, you'll be in a state of worry and you'll be anxious. If your skill is too high and the challenge is too low, you'll be bored and you'll want to get the task over with. However, if the skill and boredom lines meet, flow will happen. That is when flow happens. You can kind of see how this makes sense, right? When something is too easy, you don't feel immersed in it. You just want to get it over with. It's not fun. But when something is too hard, it's a source of anxiety. It's a source of stress. But when something meets your skill level and is challenging, when it really pushes you to your limits, is when you will be totally immersed in the task. So essentially, you want to find an activity in which your skill level meets the challenge level. And now those things might not meet perfectly. And if your challenge level is above your skill level, then you want to upgrade your skill level. Start practicing. If you want to become a better, it's so simple. If you want to experience more flow in basketball, but right now you're on a team that's too challenging for you, either drop down the challenge level to meet your skill level, or upgrade your skills so that your skills match the challenge and you can experience flow. The second thing you can do to start experiencing more flow is to increase your concentration levels. Now, this wasn't something explicitly said by Mahali, but I believe this to be true. Essentially, when you're in flow, your concentration levels are at an all-time high. So it would make sense that increasing your concentration levels would increase the probability that you get into flow, right? And so what can we do to increase our concentration? Well, I believe that meditation is one of the single greatest things you can do to increase your concentration. You're literally concentrating on the breath, losing concentration, coming back, and doing that thing over and over again. You're literally building the muscle of concentration while you're doing meditation. Now, I said 2 things, but the third thing you can do is having a flow routine or a flow trigger. So, if you know John Jones, the UFC guy, he's an MMA fighter, extremely good fighter. Before he gets in the cage, he gets up and he spins around with his arms out wide, and that is his flow trigger. It's essentially a bodily movement that triggers the brain into, okay, now it's time to get into flow state. It's time to get me to the peak of my powers. Okay, so I hope this helped you, and I cannot wait to see the progress that you make. Cheers, bro.